Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining. This side Rahul Nagan here from Treasury Consulting LLP, and today we are shooting a video about the Union Budget 2017. I know that our YouTube channel we keep on posting a lot of videos. In fact, yesterday we posted a video about the which is an interview on Treasury Consulting LLP. But today we would be posting a video about Union Budget 2017. Right now what would be Union Budget 2017 is, in my personal opinion, this Union Budget 2017 was not a good budget. Of course, there are a lot of tax issues which are there are a lot of taxation point which the finance minister is shared. So our video would be of two parts. The first part we would be covering about the unseen faces of this budget, which unfortunately media is not covering. Unfortunately, in the seminars, conferences, nobody is talking about. And majority of the fact that people don't want to listen to, because might be they don't understand, that might be it is not an area of interest, because that never get highlighted. But before to start the Union Budget 2017, I would like to start up with a small notion or a small example. Two people were sitting in Singapore with a guide, and they were sitting near Sentosa. You know that all those people who been to Singapore, they must have saw Sentosa, and Singapore is something which I always love. And they asked their guide that how a beach look like. Then a guide said that this is how a beach would look like, and this is what all about the beach is. After being to Singapore, they went to Mauritius, and you know that the Mauritius is known for the original pristine beaches. Their beaches are very beautiful beaches, and they are very clean, very neat. In fact, it's a complete blue beaches. I've never saw any kind of beach we have in Mauritius elsewhere in this globe. Then they asked the same guide that from where these beaches came, because when we were in Singapore, the beaches were not like that. Then a guide tell, sir, at that moment you asked a question that is a beach. My reply was yes, that is a beach. But now your question is now your question is which one is better, or how Mauritian beaches came up. Then my question is, these beaches are made up by nature. On the other hand, in the beaches in Singapore, it is made up by men, which is also known as reclaimed land. So the point is, a human being always wanted to listen what they seriously wanted and interested. We never wanted to go in the unseen faces. Dictionary will have a very beautiful line which is read between the lines. Today we are going to read between the lines in budget. This is going to be roughly 30-35 minutes talk, in which we are going to summarize exactly what is my opinion on the budget. And of course, this would be divided into two parts. In part number one, we would be covering the unseen faces. Now these faces would predominantly be covered the currency part, and would also be covering your fixed income part. The second part, which we are shooting on Monday, where we would be covering the equity part, wherein we would be covering the security transaction tax, we would be covering very deep in triple taxation, we would be covering about dividend policies and all. So we are dividing this into two. We're not interested in making this discussion too lengthy that everything is being covered. So all those people who are watching this video, they will get to know about unseen faces of this budget from the perspective of the currencies and from the perspective of the fixed income. Now let me summarize few points. These are the 11 points which I would like to cover. Number one is the authenticity of the FISC data. FISC is fiscal data. I would like to pose one question before the entire fraternity which we have in India and outside India, and especially before the rating agencies. Take a simple example. I am a studious person, but for a minute assuming that I am not a studious. Till now I am failing every class, 10th standard, 12th standard, my graduation, my post graduation. What suddenly happened that I cleared a PhD. In statistics, this is known as an outlier. But unfortunately, we never talk this way with the government, or we never talk this way with the agencies, those who are making the data. The biggest question which came to us from 2015 to 2017 is the authenticity of the data. And you all are very intellectual class people, those who are watching this video, you yourself know that. You just tell me and I will tell you the country. Portugal, Italy, Ireland, your Greece, your South Africa, to an extent United States, Europe. We have saw a number of times when the data presented by the government is wrong or this is manipulated. You tell me the bank and I will tell you, you tell me the bank and I will tell you their scams. LIBOR scandal, London Interbank Offer Market, electricity scandal, fixed income scandal, interest rate scandal. The total value for LIBOR scandal was $1,750 trillion, which is several times in the GDP of this world. Nobody is aware about the exact GDP of this globe, and in fact, BIS, which is Bank for International Settlement, they just have a little idea. So only and only LIBOR scandal was $1,750 trillion, which is, you can now very well estimate how much it would, how many times it would be the GDP of the globe. Now my question is, if today the finance minister coming in a country, in a parliament, and giving a statement that the fiscal deficit or the fiscal prudence is 3.5% of the GDP, I would like to ask the question about the authenticity of the data. When you started this government in 2015, this number was higher, 6.5 to 7%, and now you straight away reduce to 3.5 to 3, between 3.5 to 3%. There is nothing credible which we see on the ground. There is no real infrastructure development is happening. Nothing concrete is going on. Can you please tell me the authenticity of this fiscal data? I would like to supplement my words with a beautiful fact. I hope you are reading one business newspaper in a day, and very recently there was a news that Government of India is pushing Moody's to improve their credit rating. Today this country is enjoying a credit rating of triple B minus, and you are pushing the credit rating agencies to get a improved credit rating. All those people who are from the corporate, they very well understand that how corporate is getting a rating. They don't want to mention here what is the process, how they will get the rating. I myself was involved in one of the rating activities, and I know that how corporates are getting a rating. That everybody is aware. Why you are pushing Moody for a rating, and why Moody, Standard and Poor and Fitch are not interested in improving the outlook of this country from triple B minus. Several times these rating forums mentioned the put a view on the quality of the data which we do have. Central statistical organizations and other organizations, how efficient they are in terms of having the data, and how much authenticity we have in the data is questionable. So if today during a budget speech in a parliament you are saying that the quality, that the fiscal prudence is 3.5%, I strongly doubt that. Because this is just like the governor every time coming and saying that the WPI is negative, it means the country is facing deflation, and CPI is 5.5%. All those ladies and all those corporate people, those who are watching our video, I want you to ask a question. Do you think that in this country WPI is negative, or are we facing deflation? Do you think that the CPI, which is consumer price inflation, is between 5.5 to 6%? How many of us think that inflation in this country is between 5.5 to 6% or between 13.5 to 15%? How can we trust on a fiscal prudence data? Of course, after listening to my question, one of the excuses which will come is, the excuse would be what we can do if the government is presenting the data. Then it is a trend. Across the globe, there are many countries, those who are presenting the fake data. PIGS is known for that. Europe is known for that. Federal Reserve in United States never ever audited. You understand. So my first question, my first viewpoint on the budget. My second viewpoint on the budget is the non-performing assets we have in the bank. I served as a corporate treasurer of American company. I know how banks perform. I know how banks report data. I know how banks value their clients. Today, Reserve Bank of India is saying you have 8.43 trillion rupees of NPA, which is 8,43,000 crores. Now the question is, how authentic is this data? We know that government always misreport. If this is a bad thing, they always misreport. If there is a good thing, they always overreport. Now question is, if you read the complete budget, you will never see any concrete action this government has done when it comes to this budget has done when it comes to the non-performing asset. I would like to put this with a simple example. All those people, those who are from the corporate treasuries, they might have known a term which is called EBAM. EBAM stands for Electronic Banking Account Management. Universally, the money across the globe is controlled by SWIFT. And this SWIFT is having a product which is EBAM. What is EBAM? It is digitally encrypted data. If as a corporate treasurer you need to open an account, what you would be doing, you will sharing your KYC, you would be sharing your PAN, you would be sharing your all documentation. Rather, if you would be having EBAM, then in that regards you would be able to digitize that. One side you are talking about a digital economy, a cashless economy. Another side, when it comes to non-performing asset, none of the Indian public sector banks, you name that, State Bank of India, Punjab National Bank, Union Bank of India, Bank of Baroda, and a lot of names, State Bank of India, a lot of names, approximately 35 public sector banks, they do not have even E of the EBAM. Can't we make a provision of just 100 to 2 or 500 to 1000 crore? Although whatever number which I'm quoting is much higher, because I am going to supplement my statement with a fact, like I already supplemented non-performing asset with a fact, which is implementation of technology. I am going to further supplement this. Can't we allocate 200 to 300 crore, which we will give to the Indian information technology companies like Infi, TCS, Wipro, yours Swift, and others, to implement the EBAM in this country? So that if you are opening a bank account, you are adding a signatory, you are deleting a signatory, or you wanted to make some amendment in your board resolution, or you wanted to do any corporate amendment, you wanted to do any amendment in your ISDA, you would be able to get it done via EBAM, which is electronic banking account management. Now tell me, if we allocate 300 crores, and believe me, the number which I'm telling is a very big number. Actually, the work will get done very lesser, very lesser. It's not even it's roughly one tenth or 1/5 of 300 crore. The actual work would get done. Don't we appreciate that if we have EBAM, then entire records of all companies will get encrypted? How many shell companies we will be able to protect? How many shelf companies we would be able to identify, and so on and so forth. There is not a single word I am waiting from the last several years, that when a finance minister will come and say that he is allocating 200 crores implementation of the electronic banking account management, which would digitize all records of the banking system. I saw Subba Rao, who served 5 years. I saw yours Raghuram Rajan, who served 3 years. I saw, now we are watching Urjit Patel. Urjit Patel is anyways not speaking. I don't understand why this person do not speak and why this one do not come in a press conference and sharing his thought. Not a single governor. Before Subba Rao, Y.Y. Reddy. I don't know who was before Y.Y. Reddy. Even if you listen to the complete book of the Subba Rao, who moved my interest rate, I have a deep respect to Subba Rao ji, because this person has given sterilization to this country. When he started, the situation was that Indian team need to chase 300 runs and the total score is 180 by 7. And still he is able to win the game. I have a deepest respect to Subba Rao ji. And because of the fact that now he is a faculty member of National University of Singapore, and I have a deep respect to Singapore. If somebody is a faculty member of National University of Singapore, it simply signifies that how much quality this person do have, where technically he stand. Right, so that is why I have a deep respect for Subba Rao ji. But from Subba Rao to Raghuram Rajan till Urjit Patel, I have not saw, and even if you take Y.Y. Reddy also, several finance ministers you add. If I'm not wrong, Chidambaram was finance minister when Subba Rao ji was there. When Raghuram Rajan was here, Chidambaram was finance minister. Although he also dealt with Arun Jaitley, and now we have Arun Jaitley. Now tell me, anybody allocated 200 to 300 crore on the electronic banking account management? This is my second question to the people who made the budget. My third question is competition and SDR. 1st October 2016, our rival, trade rival, military rival, and diplomacy rival, China, they joined SDR, Special Drawing Rights. In this SDR stands for Special Drawing Rights. So you joined SDR, now you turned out to be a global currency. I would like to understand the view of the finance minister and the parliamentarians, that what is your view, how much allocation you are giving to make sure that our currency, which is Indian rupee, will turn out to be in SDR. Do we have any fixed plan? Like China from the last 20 years have kept in mind that we really wanted to have in SDR as early as possible. In the last several budgets of NDA, and in fact you take UPA also, do you have a plan that when Indian rupee would turn out to be in SDR? We have no plans. So where exactly you are good in the fixed income market. Of course, I would be covering a lot of things about tax also. Fourth is the masala bond, which is withholding tax. One side, let me first explain the masala bond. Masala bond is nothing when an Indian party sitting in India issuing an Indian denominated bond outside. We have several such varieties. We have Yankee bonds, we have Bulldog bonds, we have in Chinese dim sum bonds. In fact, masala bond is nothing but it is a copy which India has done, because it is a copy of the dim sum bond. But we because the before copy we should understand that we are not been able to achieve the success rate which dim sum achieved in recently. Now my question to you, only for the sake of formality, you are saying that the withholding tax of 5% will continue or will extend it to 2020. My question is, if I am an investor who is sitting in Singapore, it could be foreign institutional investor, it could be foreign portfolio investor, it could be qualified institutional buyer, it could be qualified institutional investor, and could be a variety of categories we have across the globe. Or I am acting as a sub account of any of these investors. You are asking me to invest in your currency, which is Indian rupee, sitting outside, sitting in my country. I am in Singapore. You are asking me to invest in Indian rupee. Why I should invest in Indian rupee? And why I should pay withholding tax? Irrespective of the fact that USD INR 1 year volatility is always 10% and it would move up, because Chinese are all scheduled to depreciate or devalue yuan by 10% in this news we have in the market. They did that in 2015, if you forgetting, and that took twice within a span of 1 week without taking any approval. Just before entering into SDR, they already devalued their currency by twice. Now, and that too in a span of 1 week, and they not took any approval from any regulator or anybody. Now today they are little bit growing. They are growing, but at a decent rate. First of all, I want like to understand why everybody always kept saying that the China is a slowing economy, on the right India is a growing economy. I'm not saying that the data which China is providing is absolutely correct, or there is no impurity in the data. Of course, everybody is having a wrong data. But the question is, if a $15 trillion economy is growing by 6.5 or 7%, and a $2 trillion economy is growing by 6.5%, who is growing? How many times China is growing of India in 1 year? If a $15 trillion economy is growing by 7.5%, 6.5 to 7% vis-a-vis an Indian economy, which is growing by 6.5%, it is a $2 trillion economy. Then in 1 year, China is growing several years of India. We don't understand that. It is just like if I am a vice president of a company and my salary is 1 lakh, and you are the manager in the company, your salary is 10,000, and I am getting an increment of 5%, which is 5,000, and you are getting an increment of 10%, which is 1,000. You mean to say that I am growing lesser than you? Sir, the rate at, even though I am getting 5% rate, but I am growing 5 times than you. Why we always take the GDP in as a taken for granted factor? This I don't understand. Chinese yuan joined SDR in 2016. It's been almost, if I'm wrong, roughly 5 months since they are in SDR. They brilliantly performed in SDR. For your information, they now moving towards a full convertibility. I acted as a corporate treasurer, having a deep interest in the foreign exchange market. In fact, foreign interest is in my DNA, foreign exchange. There's a lot of news in the market that now China wanted to remove CNH and they wanted to move to CNY, with the same which Japanese yen did in 1980. Because in 1980, Japanese yen was having two currencies, onshore and offshore. Chinese followed the same principle, onshore and offshore. But now, since they followed the same principle, now they wanted to discontinue with CNH. Of course, Rome cannot be made in a day. It would take time. But biggest countries of this globe started with a single step. And the step has already been taken. So point is, during the budget, where is the talk to make Indian rupee amongst in SDR? This is one question. Another question is, in the top 10 traded currencies of the globe, China roughly stands 6th and 7th place today. And China is the first largest trade currency of this globe, and euro is after that. And you know that now almost 6% of the foreign exchange reserves, sitting today, the foreign exchange reserves across the globe is approximately 10.5 trillion dollars as per Bank for International Settlement. Roughly 6% of the foreign exchange reserve has already been allocated in the Chinese yuan, which stands roughly 600 to 650 billion dollar, which is roughly 0.6 trillion dollar. I would like to understand from Reserve Bank of India, how much is the composition of the Indian rupee? Which central bank ever invested in Indian rupee as a reserve currency? This is one question. Why, how much time, how much budgetary allocation we are giving in terms of making the fixed income market in India is a better? Because everybody would like to do when you are leaving. Just before 2 weeks leaving, Raghuram Rajan set up a committee, and this committee came up with several recommendations to improve the fixed income market of this country. And after Raghuram Rajan, I am yet to see any news about this committee, exactly where are these proposals and what exactly you would like to do. Sitting today, the Indian fixed income market is roughly 500 to 800 billion dollar. US is 15 trillion dollar. Our neighbor, with whom we never had a good relationship diplomatically, politically and economic wise, they are far ahead than us. They have 7.3 trillion dollar, and this data is December 2016. Now when we make the fresh version of our magazine, then we are going to take the fresh data, and you will get it from our magazine. Now we stand 1 billion, China stands 7.3 trillion. Is there any comparison? Why we not given any budgetary allocation to make India a solid fixed income economy? Why Reserve Bank of India is always take the fund from the market, but rather than putting the fund in the market? These are few technical questions. Moving ahead, we all understand that there is a fight which is going on between Singapore and Dubai. I am not telling about the military war. I am telling about the business war. Dubai leadership is beautiful leadership. They always wanted to move. They always wanted to make Dubai as an economy which will give them a prestige, an economy which is full of which do not have any flaw, which is meticulous and like that. They wanted to be at par at Singapore. Singapore and Dubai is in a war. Each one is lowering the interest rate, lowering the tax rate every day. If I am not wrong, and if I have read correctly, that Singapore tax rate is roughly 15%, and they wanted to reduce further. In fact, they would have a differentiation taxation policies for startups also. Now the question is, you are not reducing the corporate tax rate. You are keeping it same, which is 30%, and after so-called education cess and all, I don't know why we are paying cess and where this money is going. This is the biggest question. Where this education cess money is going when none of the Indian business schools comes in the top 30 business schools of the globe? And where this education money is going when no Sarkari school is working at par with the private school? People, we are just producing the huge amount of crowd, but the qualitative education is nowhere, and we need to appreciate that. Still, we are paying 34% as a corporate taxation. Singapore is charging 15% as a corporate taxation, and Dubai wanted to get it lower. We know that there is a business war which is going on between them. You are not reducing the corporate tax. Why you are not reducing the corporate tax? Because today 4,70,000 crores of money is coming from corporate as a tax. But what diplomatically you played? You said that all the medium and small scale industries where the count is 7 lakh units, and you wanted to reduce the tax rate from 30% to 25%. The exchange loss, the exchanger would have a loss of 4,700 crore. I would like to understand one fact. How many of these are shell companies? How many of these are shelf companies? Of course, there is a criteria of 50 crore is there, and that too in the last year you must have recorded the 50 crore. That criteria is of course there. How many of these are shelf companies? During demonetization, when Income Tax Enforcement Directorate DRI raided the banks, especially Axis Bank and others, they got to know about so many shelf companies and shell companies created by people, those who are doing no business but they are actually enjoying all benefits. Don't we have a tax system which can tell us that how many of these are shelf companies? Why there is no reduction in the corporate tax when our neighbor is sitting at 15%, and when the new American president Donald Trump wanted to reduce the tax rate to within a bracket of 15% to 20% from which is I think roughly 35% in US, to make it US a stimulated economy. My another question is sovereign wealth fund. I know most of the people might be hearing this word first time. What is sovereign wealth fund? Everybody who's watching this video must be having a job, or they must be have their own setup. You must be having certain income and you must be having certain expenditure. That income and expenditure, the difference is your saving. That saving which you are either imparting in your bank, or it could be in the mutual fund, or it could be in a different instrument as per your risk appetite. But at the end, you have a liquidity in your saving which you can take anytime. If you are a little risk investor, you must be investing in a real estate and so on and so forth. Now the question is, across the globe, when a government saves, so government is having an income and government is having an expenditure. When the government saves, government will invest this money in a place which is known as sovereign wealth fund. So why sovereign? Because this is of government, sovereign wealth fund. Countries like Australia have a sovereign wealth fund with a corpus of roughly $76 billion. Today, the sovereign wealth fund across the globe are divided into two categories. One is known as oil-based, one is known as non-oil-based. Like Dubai Sovereign Wealth Fund is a oil-based, Qatar is a oil-based, and there are many which are oil-based. There are non-oil-based sovereign wealth fund also, which are China, Russia is a oil-based, like China, you have other, like Australia is a non-oil-based, China is a non-oil-based, Singapore is a non-oil-based. Now the question is, when we would be having our sovereign wealth fund, one side we are comparing ourselves with China, whose rating is A plus and our rating is AAA, triple B minus, 2 level before the junk. But we never wanted to see why, because they have a sovereign wealth fund which we don't have. But we don't want to make a budgetary allocation in the sovereign wealth fund. We don't want you to do that. Now I will tell you a contrast reason behind the same. First of all, we are not interested. Majority of the people, those who are watching this video, must have heard the word first time, that what exactly the sovereign wealth fund is all about. And next, moreover, a very important fact is, in this, do you understand that Reserve Bank of India every year is doing monetization of the national debt, which is roughly 66,000 crore, and submitting to the current account of this government. It means if today this government is claiming, or any government in India is claiming, that they have a fiscal surplus because of the cut in the oil prices and so on, then 66,000 crore is coming from Reserve Bank of India alone. You first please take this money out and then tell whether you have a fiscal prudence or not. The very first thing that we need to understand. Nobody is talking about a sovereign wealth fund in budget, and not a single rupee has been kept as an provision to make this country to have a sovereign wealth fund in this country. Another thing is GST. There are multiple rates in GST. Hopefully by 1st July we would have GST, and hopefully the GST would be smooth. But I would like to understand that what exactly the impact of the GST on the economy, how much surplus we would be able to have, whether GST would be paper based or it would be a technological based. Like today you have a banking system which is complete paper based. If you want to open an account, you will take so many papers: PAN card, Aadhaar card, ration card, company address proof, passport, everything, and nobody bothers how somebody is using these documents. You know that today is a world of cyber security. Nobody bothers about that. We are signing on our passport and giving it to somebody who can just take a printout of that and he can use it anyway. Now, whether this GST will be a technological based or non-technological based, which software we are implementing, which technology we are implementing in the Indian Revenue Authority is to make sure that all the transaction of goods and service would be online, and if somebody who is sitting in the Arunachal Pradesh would be able to submit his taxation like this, like we are doing in Singapore or other offshore treasury centers. I am yet to see how much technical budgetary allocation has been made towards the technical side of it. I'm not talking about the different rates in GST. I'm not talking about the dual control. I'm not talking about other things, because this is a different ball game. Another thing is improvement in transfer pricing. You name the company, Nokia, Shell, Microsoft. You know what happened with Vodafone, and GAR is on the way. What improvement we did in the transfer pricing to make sure that such taxation issues will not come again in this country, or those who are already facing the taxation issues will get relieved. Concrete changes in the transfer pricing, and of course the implementation of technology. Last but not the least, triple taxation. What is triple taxation? If a corporate who is earning 100 rupees, 34 he has to pay as a corporate tax. He left with 66. Out of 66, he will pay 20% as a dividend distribution tax. And then when this dividend will come to the party, he will again pay tax on that. This is known as triple tax terrorism, triple taxation system. You mean to say a corporate already paid a tax of 34%, now you are declaring a dividend, again you will pay a dividend distribution tax, and when somebody receiving the dividend greater than 10,000 or greater than 10 lakh, then again he need to shell out the dividend distribution tax. This is the beauty of the game. During UPA budget, this current government said that this is a tax terrorism, but the point of the game is, are we stopping it or are we continuing it? If I already paid 30% as a taxation, why I should again pay dividend distribution tax? And why the recipient, whether he is receiving less than 10 lakh or whether he is receiving greater than 10 lakh, any amount, why he will pay taxation? Another beautiful fact, last thing about this budget, you in a parliament is giving a statement that this society is not a tax efficient society. 3 crore people are paying taxes out of 125 crore people, or 2 crore cars has been sold, and so on and so forth. I wanted to ask one technical question from you. We assuming the population of this country is 125 crores. Every family must have 5 people. Every family would have 5 people. So you end up 50 crores, every family would have 5 people. You end up roughly 25 crores household. You know that in India, majority of the scene is one person is earning and the entire house is eating. Yes, in a metros like Delhi, Calcutta, Bangalore, there is a scene that 2 persons are working, male is also working, female is also working, and then you are earning your bread and butter. Now the point is, out of this 25 crore families, we all understand that 60% of the population is 60% of the population is in rural areas. Do you think that the rural areas are able to pay you taxes? For a minute, you even take them. The average per capita income of United States is approximately $40,000, and there is a standard deduction which is coming roughly $8,000, so total end up $31,000 to $32,000. And here people love to pay taxes because they know this is ultimately getting in return in the form of the social security benefits and the other government other government expenditures on them. And it's the same scene as we have in Australia. Here the total per capita income is turned out to be 70,000. Now the point is, when the per capita income is 70,000 and 0 to 5 lakh, the first bracket of tax is almost zero tax. Do you still wanted them to pay taxes? If we go by this way, 125 crore people, if we divide these into families, so roughly 25 crore families. Out of 25 crore families, 60% are from the rural areas, and we know what is the scene in the rural area. Politically and non-politically speaking, how much growth we have in the rural areas, we all know. Where is the water table, how much they are earning, farmers are committing society, we all know about that. Not a single person has been exempted from that information. The rest, out of this rest 40%, roughly 8 to 10 crore families, 4 crore people you yourself are saying are paying taxes. You left with how much? 4 crore people. Don't you think that the regulatory agencies are so capable in this country who is able to check it out why these 4 crore people are not paying taxes? So the question is, before giving this statement in the parliament that out of 125 crore people, only 3 crore people are paying taxes, we should have a strong analysis in place. Rather than giving a statement, ideally should be 8 to 10 crore people should be end up paying taxes, and out of these 4 crore are paying taxes. So roughly 50% of the population is paying taxes and 50% is not paying. Regulatory need to take up a call whether they really interested in checking why you are not paying and so on and so forth. These are my few important points about the budget, wherein I have not touched the tax part, I have not touched the indirect taxation, I have not touched the direct taxation, because I think that there are many speakers who already covered a deep part of it. Yes, on Monday we would be shooting another video wherein we would be dedicating this to the equity markets, wherein we would be covering the provisions of security transaction tax and others. My speech on the budget, or my view on the budget, you know I always critically acclaim the budget. My critically acclamation is all about the fixed income market, allocation to the fixed income market, allocation to the currencies, and allocation to the ease of doing business and the competitiveness of this economy. And especially, you know that I love technology. It is all about the technology. This was from the budget from Treasury Consulting LLP. If you have any question, you can contact us. My mobile number is known to many people, 9899242978. My email ID is rahul.magan@treasuryconsulting.in, and website is www.treasuryconsulting.in. We would like to remind you that the February 2017 version of our magazine, which is the Maverick Treasure, which is coming in February, which is roughly 11th February or 12th February, any one date, we are releasing this on the social platforms like Amazon and all. This time we are doing a lot of improvisation. I'm not saying that the previous versions were incorrect. I'm saying that every month we are going to improvise that, because we wanted to make this a global magazine. This is the endeavor of the publishing desk. The cost of subscription is 1200 rupees per year. Plus, company is also coming up with a magazine on the fraud. That magazine we titled this The Fraudster. This magazine would dedicate it to frauds, analytics, BCP, business continuity planning, CAT tools, computer aided audit techniques, and variety of others. And such things. We are also very pleased to share that Treasury Consulting LLP got up a project of a financial restructuring and business restructuring from a company which is a good company and having a good top line. This is the start of the game of the company in the financial restructuring. With this, we are going to restructure the company from a business and the financial angle. Of course, I'm not in a situation to divulge the details of the company because this is something confidential. But with this, we are entered into that area. Now we are doing consulting project of information technology. We are doing consulting projects of this financial restructuring. We are of course doing consulting project of foreign exchange, and we are soon starting the fixed income as well. And hopefully by end of half second, which is June, we will share you a very good news when it comes to the fixed income. With this, we would like to thank you very much, and hopefully you would take our views in a positive consideration. It is not, we are not giving any remarks to any government. We do not want to target anybody in, but we wanted to critically acclaim the budget, and we wanted to see where this budget stands in terms of the fixed income market, in terms of the currency market, and in terms of the technology. We are not here to check about tax because a lot of people said about the tax. With this, we thank you very much and have a great time ahead.